from this voice. The festive season is a time for family and friends to gather, reflect on the year, take a break, and then recharge. But it often comes with extensive spending throughout the month of December, which leads to some financial headaches for already constrained consumers in January. So, we're going to talk about tips on how to spend responsibly during the festive season. No, don't leave to go make a cup of tea in the kitchen. Now's the time you sit down and pay attention. Financial planning coach Nelisiwe Mbara and head of retail at Imbewu Financial Services, Musa Nxumalo, are my guests this morning. Lovely to have you with us. So, I want to start off by saying welcome. Here we go again, another December, another financial planning chat. In my mind, I think it's just simply too late to think about budgets and about planning at this stage because the die has already been cast. If it hasn't been a habit all year long, it's not going to start now. Would you agree with me?
Definitely, definitely, man, because obviously, as we know, a habit is something that you intentionally and continuously do. And as you said, if that something is not engraved in you, now where you are, we can't look at starting it now to say now we are starting a habit. We are looking at where are you and what can we do with what you have to get you to a place where you desire to be.
Okay, so a place that we desire to be requires that we think about it, Musa. We are actively engaging this idea that we want to, first of all, be intentional about our finances. We might engage in some kind of planning, and then we have, a purpose for what we want to do with money. But, many of us haven't even started that yet.
Quite true, quite true. But I will say that it's never too late. Yes, for some that got paid maybe on the 16th or, or the 15th. So worst of all, it was a long weekend, which had a lot of festivities. And also that's what some of the parts we spoke about is that December time, there's a lot of festivities that actually, that's the habit where we always want to have fun during December. And that's what brings out all these problems where on a normal month, we wouldn't be spending so much. But December, we're bound to spend quite a lot of money. How? It's just the habit of who we are.
All right, so given that we might not have the practice of preparation, some of us might have already spent the money. What can we do now? Nelisiwe, when you typically advising people, even at this stage, where there might not have been provision, what are some of the ways we can still try to be in control and on top of things?
I like that you use the word control, Iman, because obviously we are the control of self. And as someone who works in the coaching space, I work a lot with clients in terms of how can we shift your mindset, in terms of how you show up, because obviously how we show up is highly influenced by a lot of things, the environment we are in, our emotions, how we grew up, and the people that we actually keep around. So I would say to people that are finding themselves in sort of a pickle in terms of where they currently are, and they are looking for a way in terms of how can I make now this rent stretch a bit longer, it would be to come back to self and ask yourself, what is actually important to me? And what do I actually want to achieve for myself and for the people that are dependent on me? And if you know that your bonus was meant for your school for the education for your kids, but you find yourself maybe in a place where you can't control your spending, you actually need to go back and reflect on self.
Hey, you said like three things which are important, and part of which was, well, let me pick up two, the emotions. Sometimes, Musa, it's very hard to control those emotions because we're with family, we might want to please people, we might also want to make decisions that are not really grounded in reason, but grounded in just being emotional. And the other is the historical piece. If you didn't have stuff growing up and now you have some money, you might just spend it without thinking. So those are big pieces. How do we actually change that?
I think that one is more of education. Education first, and we need to educate each other on what's actually important. Because I think we put too much value on what people say about us than actually focusing on what's important to me. Because I've been in a situation, or I've seen people, quite a number of them, where we spoke about it before, where I come from is that around December, people will be buying cars to go home, especially for people like me who come from outside the province.
And like me.
Yes.
December time is a time where you buy a car. You want to go show them at home that back in Joburg, I've achieved quite well. And then also, if you already have the car, you come back with a boot full of food and everything to show at home that, you know what, your child back at Joburg has made it, that neighbor, that house has made it. And it's something that we need to start seeing that that's not what's important in life. If we could just move away from focusing too much on what people see, the perspective of people.
All right, so what do we substitute that emotion with? Because it is there.
It is there.
It happens. I know when I go back to my mom's home, in Eastwood in Pietermaritzburg, part of the pride is I was a child that, also partly grew up here. I want the neighbors to also be proud of me too. And so that's a hard thing to substitute, Nelisiwe.
It is really a difficult thing to substitute, Iman, and I think I'm just always going to go back to self, because when you think about it, I was looking at a survey done by Wonga, and they were saying that over this festive period, it is expected that about 280-something billion would be spent by South Africans. That's a lot of money, considering where obviously we are as an economy, and considering that people are feeling so much cash strapped. But obviously there are some people who are feeling some sort of relief now with the interest rate cut. But what I would substitute that feeling with is really just owning self and controlling self, and being okay with knowing that having less is okay. And it is what? It's a habit that you continuously teach yourself, you continuously develop to get to a place where you can say, I'm fine with people coming home and they're seeing flashy cars, but I know my why, and I know what I'm here to do, and I know how I'm getting there. So what are the tools that we've employed for yourselves to keep you in track in your financial freedom journey?
I think so important, again, what the pair of you are saying, and that piece about knowing the satisfaction and the pride should come from, I actually have a bigger plan. It might not be in all the, this is the shiny car and the boot is full of groceries or whatever, but in the long run, my mother's going to have this, or in the long run, my children are going to have that. And I'm going to come back to the concept of delayed gratification in just a moment, and then some really practical tips in terms of handling the money, especially if the bonus is not there, on how we can do this to tide us over this festive season. And I'm joined by financial planning coach Nelisiwe Mbara and head of retail at Imbewu Financial Services, Musa Nxumalo. All right, I want to bring up a story, and I know our viewers really love stories. So it's about the marshmallow experiment. I think it was in the early 1960s. In fact, Stanford professor Walter Michael, so he tested hundreds of children. Basically, the experiment was this. I'm going to give you one marshmallow, and if you are able to resist for a short period of time, I will double that reward and give you 2 marshmallows in just a moment. So the researchers went in, they set up everything, gave the kids 1 marshmallow, left the room for 15 minutes. When they came back, they noticed that a lot of kids were just too in a hurry, and they just ate that marshmallow. And very few of them resisted and waited and then got the double benefit of having delayed their gratification. I think what was most important about the experiment was that 40 years later, when researchers went to check on those kids, they found that those who were able to resist being instantly gratified had better financial outcomes. Their lives went in a much smoother way, and they had made better choices. So the concept of delayed gratification, which we've touched on variously in this conversation, very, very important, Nelisiwe. How do we steal ourselves a beautiful pair of shoes? Maybe we'll buy a house, or we'll do something crazy. Let's just live, because we've only got one life to live. That's typically what we say.
Very true.
So I think to that, Iman, I'd say there is benefit, as you said, to delay gratification, but we must always be very mindful that we are greedy humans. Like our behavior, our behavior will always show up. You just want to grab. And going to Musa's example, where people are buying flashy cars to flash and show off over the December period, it's because that's their money story. That's what they've been influenced by, to actually believe that if I come around December holidays and I come with a flashy car, it actually shows the community that I've achieved. But our money stories are not the same. And how you cultivate that money story and how you tell that money story actually tells in terms of how you will actually be successful in the long term in your financial freedom. How do people who are watching this morning define and tell their money story? How should they be doing that? So I would say what influences your money story, again, Iman, is obviously how we grew up. You have to ask yourself, what is your first memory of money? I think this is something that we don't sit with. And I asked myself this question recently, and I remember that actually in primary school I used to sell biscuits to the school children, and that obviously then informed that, hey, I'm actually somewhat of a person who has an entrepreneurial mindset. So now it's expanding and it's feeding into areas of my life that can even expand more, and it just then fulfills my progress in life and how I show up in life. So how I would say you can sort of shift that story for yourself is really to reflect and ask yourself, what is your first memory of money, and who influenced this memory of money for yourselves? I mean, as kids, I have kids of my own, and I'm very deliberate and intentional in terms of how I teach them about money, because obviously I know that this is the foundation that they will remember in terms of their finances, and as to your theory of the marshmallow theory, and it will obviously then feed into how they show up in their adulthood around money.
Those emotions are very important. I mean, part of what I do for myself, Musa, because I also like things, and I also have the same background, not coming from a wealthy background, and now having money is, I want to spend it because it's mine and I worked hard.
Definitely.
Is I now walk away from something 3 times, and if by the 4th time I'm circling back, then at least I've had time to cool off and reevaluate. But you're going to share with us some very important tips on how to manage what we do have now.
So practically, the way I put it is that I see December as war. And I'll put it in a very good way so that you can understand. During, like, our finances, we're at war with our finances during December, because the reason why January is called worry at the end is because we do silly things during this festive season, which impact our finances for the rest of the short term of the next year. So one of the biggest problems is exactly what we've been talking about today, is that we just are in this phase where we just want to gratify ourselves right now, and then we're forgetting about what's going to happen within the next few months. So part of the thing is that we need to have a plan. We need to have structure. So you can't go into war without any structure. War, the structure that we're going to put in is a budget. You need to know exactly that from my bonus that I got, how much of it I can spend on certain things. So you spoke about that. There's a lot of us that like things. Budget that in there to say that you're not really not giving yourself that, but is the money there to get that? If it's there, go ahead.
So I'm going to be a viewer, and we're sitting with our paper and our pen, and you're giving me this tip. Right, what am I writing down?
So first, what are the expenses?
Right.
There is your monthly expenses, which are stringent. They'll always be there.
Yeah.
Then December expenses. December expenses for people like us who stay outside the province, there's traveling, going and coming back. A lot of people budget for the traveling, going, and coming back is always a problem.
And they're not staying there because you're also spending money.
You're also spending there. So also when you're there, there's something that we call black tax.
Yeah.
Where you need to budget for such things. The boot full of food and all of that, you need to budget for that. So you want to please your parents, or you want to please your family, or even neighbors. For some people, want to budget that there. Do I have money for such? Because I think the moment you have a plan, you'll know exactly if I can do all of these things or if I can't. And then the moment you find out that actually I can do this thing, I say go ahead and do it. Go ahead and have fun, because it's been a rough year, but budget it through.
Like a slush fund of some sort.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I get that, and it sounds, in fact, when you say it, it just sounds so practical and easy to do. Some people get intimidated because they feel like some things I can't quantify. So that's where they kind of lose the plot a little bit. Is an alternative just ring fencing? Okay, I might have at least X amount of money, so that is all the money that I'm going to use.
Exactly.
Only that on things for the family and for the extended family. The problem, though, Nelisiwe, is, so people will look at the 3 of us and say, yeah, they can talk all they want, but everything that I have, and we see this in South Africa, if you think about studies, for example, 20 million debt-active people in the country, half of the working-age population. But here's the thing, the middle-class workers group paying around 80% of their net take-home pay on servicing debt. Now, I know that debt has a number of, can have good sides as well. It's good for the economy and so on. But if I'm paying so much money just on servicing debt, I don't have the liquidity to do the things that need to go in the budget that you were talking about just now, Musa. So how do we deal with that conundrum?
This is always a question that raises a lot of eyebrows, because how can you tell me that I need to cut my spending when I'm already sort of cash-strapped and all my money is going towards servicing debt? But it really also starts with your budget. Same to Musa's point. You must actually look. You said 80%. If 80% of my salary is going to service debt, it means that this habit is a habit that I formed quite a long time ago, obviously. I needed a sense of fulfillment for me to actually acquire that amount of debt, to actually then say, this is sort of my money value that I place on myself. So with this, what I'm trying to get to is that we need to be really mindful in terms of how we also set our goals, because the goal is the very thing that actually starts you to the roadmap. You need to have really measurable, specific goals that you can say, over the December period, I need 20,000 Rand to travel, to pay for XYZ, and I need to have it in 12 months' time. Now, that's a goal that you know that you can action. You know how you're going to get there. You know the time frame to get there. And it really also keeps you accountable when you actually also use your own language to actually then articulate those goals.
So the December budget is birthed in January, I think is what Nelisiwe is saying. And listening to Musa and Nelisiwe, have a budget, write it down. When it's in black and white, then you can see, oh, oopsie, so that, you know, that instant purchase that I wanted to make doesn't fit into this picture at all. So we've